just the design philosophy which leads to uh, you know uh, a sustainable practice. So I would like to talk about, I would like to run everywhere, when it comes to the practice as such. So I'll just start with a small story of how my studio kickstarted, my studio's work kickstarted. Like I was practicing as just a freelancer, and I was teaching as well. So as soon as I was kickstarting this studio space, I was left with just this a small two terraces. That's it. So these terraces are very narrow spaces. They are very, what to say? It's 14 or almost 13 and a half feet by 36 feet. So I just had those two motamadis to, connect and get going. So what I did was I introduced a mezzanine floor with a metal roof, and I connected both the terraces together, and I created almost like a studio with a workshop, with a meeting room, as well as uh, model making workshop. Everything on three different levels. The studio itself is made into three different levels because of this mezzanine floor. And we sort of made sure we wanted to do some reclaim some wood and use it properly. So there is this particular room which you see in this photograph. Are you able to see this photograph, Prithvi? Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, great. So I was able to. This particular room was completely done with reclaimed materials, except the roof, of course. So what we did was we, like made sure there was this bungalow being renovated. Right on top of the bungalow, the ancestral property. It's a very old bungalow, 1967. It was built in. So the structure was not weak. It is very much in a good shape. So I just felt this terrace can be put to good use. And also this reclaimed wood, if you treat it well, they can, like serve the purpose really well. So I thought, why not? So all the doors, windows, the chair, the old fan, the almanach, everything is reclaimed here. So what I did was, while during the renovation, I made sure that like I like secure them properly during the renovation, because the site is not usually maintained, or it is not a place to be maintained well. It will never be maintained well. So you have to take some extra effort to make sure that none of the windows are damaged, none of the grills are damaged. So I took all those efforts and made sure the doors and windows are in right shape, and got it up, got it treated for fire resistant, insecticide resistant, all those blah blah blah, and then made sure like they look good. And this is the west wall of our studio. The studio's west wall doesn't have any landscape to be seen. If you can very easily, I could have had a bigger window, but there was no view properly as such. It just leads on to some restaurant's chimney next door. So I just felt, let the west sun come in above the eye level with these small holes, and that will solve the purpose. Letting in light when the day is dingy, and yeah, and these are photographs of the staircase, which is a two-in-one purpose. It was done for, like it can has a, it accommodates a, what to say, a refrigerator. It accommodates a filing cabinet. It accommodates all our cabinet needs, as well as you can climb over to the mezzanine roof through it. And this is the whole picture of it. So I made sure I didn't overdo it anywhere except the roof, the ceiling underneath the mezzanine floor. That's a magnetic ceiling where you can use that whole ceiling as a magnetic pinup board. So I made sure, we sort of got some GI sheets and it got pasted onto the ceiling so that, right next to the courtyard. By the way, that yellow wall which you see there is a courtyard. Even though the studio is very small, I made sure, all the five elements need to come into the studio. So I wanted it to rain right next to my drafting board. The whole purpose of the studio was to sort of, keep me inspired more than anything. So I made sure, right next to my drafting board, I needed it to rain. I needed it to, you know, like I needed a lot of light to be there more than anything. So this was during the course of work. So the whole of the studio was done with terracotta floor. It was completely, as you can see this, it was completely all the three levels, including toilets. Excuse me. So including the toilets, it was done with the terracotta floor. And I made sure both the north and south side, we have a lot of landscape to be seen. We have a lot of tree covers to be seen. So I didn't interrupt that view anywhere. So I kept the whole of 9 to 10 feet open. Mm, Any of the windows and doors on uh, the north and south side. In fact, I made sure the studio needs to be completely open and it needs to be completely transparent in different ways. For example, there is no hierarchy in the studio. There is, like everybody calls me by my name, and there is no senior architect, there is no junior architect, there is no you know hierarchy as such. And I thought that philosophy need to be translated into the spatial design as well as the look and feel of the studio as well. So there is no walls built inside the studio so that you can't see into the next room. Everything is transparent. Anybody can see from anywhere to any part of the studio. So I made sure, like that happened. And you can you go to the Insta page and you can go through the small write-ups we have done here. And this is a small section of the studio where you will be able to see how the three levels are connected. Like where the courtyard will be properly seen, and the courtyard is extended beyond. Courtyard extends in two levels. So it's in the first level there's a courtyard. In the second level, you can look into the courtyard. In the third level, the courtyard extends. So the part of the courtyard belongs to the third room which you saw. One side of this room is completely open to the courtyard where people can smoke, people can sit outside and sketch. If you want to water the plants, anybody can do it at any time. So there is no restrictions there in the studio. And it has shaped up pretty well finally. Where one second. So this was the process is the most important, right? The process is the most important. So I would like to show you how my brain worked during the course of me designing the studio. Initially, when you look at the first picture, this picture, it was just two levels I planned. Like I wasn't planning to eat into the third level of the studio, but I just wanted a courtyard. I just wanted sloping roofs, and I wanted the roofs to be insulated because of the Chennai summer and everything. But like initially, these are the thought process I was dealing with. You know, Here this denotes the spiral staircase which was built in 1967, and I wanted to retain the spiral staircase. I didn't want to add something which is very gizmo-ish, some metal staircase which takes you to the office. I didn't want any of that. I didn't want to touch that. So I just reused like recuperated the whole staircase, gave it an umbrella, and I was done with that. I just still, like you will be able to see the steep staircase. I kept it steep because we needed more space here since the first level. You can see my mouse wandering around, Prithvi.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, super. So the space where my mouse is, that is where the workshop is going to be. So the workshop is going to be a furniture workshop where we experiment with all sorts of furniture, including bamboo, where we get bamboo from 16 feet, like to 8 feet. So we just thought that space needs to be bigger. So I sort of had to, make sure the staircase isn't, like, wandering into the workshop space. So yeah, and this is where the studio was taken to the third level because it was easier that way. I was almost reaching to the third level, and I thought, why not? Let's move into that as well, so that we can have some more space for the interns, the junior architects, whoever wants to. It's more of a chilling zone, and it's more of the wind funnel for the entire studio. That is where the studio receives the southeast wind and funnels into the whole of the studio downstairs. So when the third level room where we reclaimed all the wood furniture and everything, that room receives all the wind and it funnels it into the entire studio. It's part of the plan to capture the wind, but like we were rewarded with more than enough wind from that room. So this is how the design process sort of kick-started. And then the mezzanine floor, I made sure it needs to be concrete so that if somebody is dancing above my head, it shouldn't be audible when I'm on my drafting board downstairs. So the this picture denotes something called a decking sheet, which is available in the market these days. Tata company does a very good job. So we sort of got the decking sheet, put it on top of the metal framework, and had a small reinforcement and poured concrete. So it's sort of an RCC, but not a typical RCC. So, so you should be able to see the entire process. So yeah, so this is how the whole studio was designed. As you can see here, this room is entirely open to a rectangular courtyard, which vertically, like transcends to the courtyard underneath. So we are planning to have creepers from the above courtyard. We are planning on a green waterfall which comes from above and gets to the first level. So, so this is the space. I'm showing this image to show you the narrowness of the studio, and if you increase the volume of the space, what can be more possible. So yeah, for the same space, as you can see with the metal roof and everything, which is going to be the second level, and how we connected all the three levels, be able to see the frameworks. These are pretty simple metal structures, L angles, and rectangular box sections, trusses. You know, we just used them and went ahead. So this is from downstairs. So this is the restaurant, which is right next door, and this is the old ancestral bungalow. So in between these two spaces, our studio is coming along, and this is the topmost third level which we are eating into. So yeah, this is where we are. If you look at these windows, these are the same windows which we have used above, and I just made sure the elevation is not disturbed. The elevation is taken above to the third level as well. So, so this is where the Bharat Bistro, the restaurant, is part of the property. So I was waiting for them to finish construction and then use their wall and like this is our studio from downstairs, and this is the spiral staircase which you can see from underneath. So this is the decking sheet which comes on top of the metal structure, and we pour concrete, and it becomes a proper roof. So yeah, so it might look complicated, but it's a very simple step to come up with a semi-temporary structure, which one second. So the pitched roof was done because the corporation had norms, and you cannot go beyond certain heights in on old buildings. So we just made sure like the roof is disproportionate. If you can see, the first year students, especially, you guys would have learned about proportions. You would have learned about other principles of design. So I didn't mean to disrespect the principles of design, but in this case, it had to be done. And in this case, in my stance, I made sure the volume is bigger so that the the look and feel of it, as well as the experience you get when you are inside the studio, matters the most. So I made sure that is my strength here. So I sort of eat it into that. And yeah, this is the west wall, how it was designed. As soon as you enter the mezzanine floor, there are so many different openings which gives the west sun into the brings the west sun into the studio. So these are pretty simple, prefabricated cylindrical, you know, concrete rings, which are usually kept with, like kept and built with the same way to introduce chimneys, to introduce exhaust fans as such from kitchens, from toilets. Especially low budget buildings, they do that. But by introducing these, if you can bring in light, I thought, why not? It is very cheap. One ring doesn't even cost you 200 rupees, 300 rupees. That's it. So, in my defense, it's a very sustainable way to bring uh, the West orange. Uh, like the studio is usually orange in color in, in around the time of sunset, and all these small circles are replicated onto the opposite wall. So it sort of does justice. Am I audible, Prithvi?
Yes, Guna, you're audible.
Okay, great.
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So as you can see, the sun is setting, and you should be able to see the sun via that. So circle, and yeah, to get you an idea where this is how you enter the studio through the spiral staircase and go up there. And studio's volume has been made bigger. It is almost like 26 feet from the first level. So you would be able to see the whole of the studio's volume. You should be able to see the volume here, experience the volume here. So since it's a very narrow space, increasing the volume help to sort of uh, you know uh, give a give such an experience altogether. So yeah, that is that. This is the picture of the reclaimed windows without the shutters. We have taken out the shutters, and the windows were placed, and later the shutters were added, even though they were a part of the reclaimed windows. Uh, you have to take these steps to make sure the windows are not damaged. And these are the terracotta tiles which have come in our courtyard spaces, especially. And as you can see, like this is the second step of all these site improvements happening. We made sure all these waterproofing and like retaining the old building and retaining elevation of the old bungalow. It was taken care of in certain ways. So so this gives you the idea of the volume inside the studio. Like uh, the height of the roof, the length of the studio. Like you'll be able to see all of these. You know. So these are the south windows, and these are the east windows. So most of it is completely open, and you'll be able to see a lot of tree cover around. So that sort of you know, keeps the studio very lively. Especially the junior architects who chill in this room. They sort of love the sports facility, which is again designed by Studio Achari. Which is this room overlooks the studio, so it sort of gives a view. It sort of you'll be able to see the tree cover around, as well as there is sort of these are the tiles from those terracotta factories. So these tiles are sort of heavy duty terracotta, and these are very cheap tiles. They are around 40 rupees per square feet, and they are pretty smooth as well. So it sort of it doesn't crack, especially in the workshop part of the studio. If you're going to drop a hammer, if you're going to drop some heavy instruments, these tiles shouldn't be breaking around. So I made sure these tiles were stress tested, and I made sure that circular element which we introduced there, uh, I made sure it's sort of replicated everywhere. In front portion of the studio, as you can see, there is this huge circle, and the architects are not supposed to give a bigger signboard. I made sure this circle is accommodated with our studio's logo, or like studio's name, with a backlight. It will be sort of demarcating the territory, making sure the studio is visible from the street downstairs. And as well as overall, if you consider this process, retaining the old metal doors, retaining the wooden doors, everything like sort of uh, puts you in a very sustainable direction. As you can see from the sports facility, uh, so these three windows are replicated the ground floor, first floor, as well as the third level of the studio, which is the second floor. So, and this big opening opens up to the sports facility, which is the south side, where Chennai winds, they reach, like into the studio via this south face more than any other direction. So, this is nearing the completion. This is how the tiles were very vibrant and goes well with the wooden finish. And the colors used are usually like neutral colors. Neutral colors are nothing but black, white, and the color between them, the grays, as well as the wooden, as well as the terracotta, the browns especially. Browns as well belong to the neutral shade. And this is a view from the mezzanine into the workshop, as well as you'll be able to see into the streets. So yeah, everything is transparent. As you can see, anybody can look from the road into the studio till here. So all you can do is have curtains, keep it shut if you're having a private meeting or something, and then you don't need the studio has been functioning for the past 1 year, and we haven't made any like improvements into the studio. We haven't introduced the shades, yes, shades yet, and we haven't done any of that. So this shows you, the reclaimed doors and windows finally in place, varnished and good to go. And this is the south window which I was talking about. They can be partially opened. At the same time, during rains, you can keep them shut, so you don't need a shading device as such. You don't need a like any other shading device which covers the huge window. Uh, if sometimes it's too sunny, but we use this space for model making, and this space needs the all the natural light because you are precise when you're cutting for models, you're sketching for models, and the functionality of this particular space is justified by this huge window, according to me. And yeah, finally, this is how it panned out. This was during the carpentry phase where the whole studio was flooded. The whole studio was, taken aback because it's a very small space. And until it was done, you know, we sort of drew on the walls, made sure the walls are aligning with the metal structures, and you're not, you have to take every element into account and made sure, the materials you're using are very basic materials. You're not going for anything expensive. So you have to take that extra care to, give proper supports, give extra supports to make sure the staircase is not going to become vulnerable through the course of time. And we made sure these smart cantilevers are supported by metal structures and which transcends to the handrail as well. So, finally, this is what we got as the studio, and it's solves the purpose. That's all I can say more than anything. It's not too expensive. It's not too labor oriented as well. It's just simple masons and few welding works and few carpenters. That's it. It's not too complicated. As long as we made sure the terracotta color, flows in our front facade as well. And we gave this huge umbrella sort of a canopy which covers this old staircase. So you enter through the staircase and you'll be carrying a lot of stuff through the staircase. So we introduce a small metal structure here so that all these raw materials can be loaded on to the person standing here onto the studio, so that we don't have any grills in this window yet. So it's sort of we make furnitures and we carry it down through this window only. We carry it down, so it's super functional as of now. Uh, uh, it's pretty much the studio with all the reclaimed wood and everything. And as you can see, the, the circular cuts are introduced in the front facade as well here. And all these metal structures are fitted with track lights so that you can add or reduce lights, or you can change the direction of lights as per your functionality. So the studio was was targeted at full and full the functional aspect while designing, and we made sure like when the neutral colors fell in place, when all the soft elements and the earthy materials fell in place, it sort of gave this vibe finally, which was pretty good, which was uh, for whatever we spent, I think we got the best out of it. And this is the courtyard on top. This is more like a balcony, but it's a closed introverted balcony where like people can smoke, where people can like take care of the plants, where the dogs can rest, like, yeah. And that's it about the studio. And you will be able to read the small write up about the studio in our Insta page. And I thought we can move on to the next project. What, Prithvi? Do you need a break or something?
No, you can continue. No problem.
Okay. Uh,
Uh,
I think few of them have asked
put up
questions.
questions. Yeah. So
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
Devi Bharati who's asking about the ceiling where
Uh-huh.
you said there's a magnetic pin board.
Correct.
So can you explain about the ceiling is the question.
Okay.
And what is the lintel level that you have used? That is another question.
Okay. Deva Bharati, your question here is, can you explain about the ceiling which you said as magnetic pin-up board more? So you want to elaborate me more on it, and what is the lintel level used? The lintel levels are, I think, it's a 7.5 feet height lintel in most of the studio space. As you can look at this image, right above, the entrance doorway, the lintel appears here. So it's a 7.5 feet level, and the magnetic ceiling's level is 8 feet 1 inch. And to elaborate more on the magnetic ceiling, what we can do is we can swipe behind this process of you know, uh, 1 second. What we did was the ceiling was, as you can see here, it is already done. So what we did was we sort of screwed few MDF boards onto the metal members which should be seen underneath. And then onto the MDF boards, we sort of pasted these GI tiles. GI means galvanized iron sheets will be available. Of course, magnets stick onto iron, right? So galvanized iron sheets, you need to get thin sheets, and you need to test the magnet on top of the sheets before buying it. And we sort of, like pasted these GI sheets onto the MDF. So initially, this is how our ceiling was. You'll be able to see the decking sheet and everything, and the metal framework and everything. And as you can see, they are screwing the MDF right here onto the ceiling. And this is that 7.5 feet height I said, and this is the 8 feet 1 inch level which I was talking about. And yeah, since it's right next to the courtyard and this window as well, it's big. So this whole ceiling is very lit up, and I usually, since it's very functionally oriented thing, I usually, like right after drafting, me and many of my friends, we sort of sleep on the floor. Right after drafting, you just lie down there for getting some air. Your neck will be hurting, your shoulders will be aching, so you just lie down there right next to the drafting board. So I wanted it to be completely blending along with my routine every day. What would I do after drafting? I sleep on the floor. When I'm sleeping on the floor, I need to look at more inspirations. So I need to pin up that. So, so that's what led to that magnetic pin-up board, and I think that is the only thing which I sort of spent around. It's around 230 square feet, and for magnetic for magnetizing the whole ceiling, I sort of spent around 25,000 on it. And the whole studio, I haven't spent that much on very like particular elements, but in this case I sort of wanted the ceiling to be more inspiring. So I went ahead with that and I overdid that here. uh, so I can call this ceiling mentally sustainable. Yeah, for me.
The the other question was, what was the lintel level that has been used?
Little level, like I said, it's 7.5 feet, right?
Mm.
Lin-
Oh,
Lintel, right? Lintel is 7.5 feet,
oh,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Then there's another question
Hello,
where
sir.
uh,
I'll like to read that question. We have seen the design satisfying the needs of the studio, but as we started with sustainable, what are the sustainable materials or elements or techniques accommodated other than using terracotta tiles and reclaimed wood or windows? The one thing was Shakti. I made sure that we are not air conditioning the studio. That is the best thing sustainably I can do for the environment. So, like I talked about the southeast part of the northernmost part of, I mean, the southern southeastern, the topmost part of the studio, it acts as a wind catcher for us. So we have used the wind catcher separately as an architectural element in another project, which I will show you later. But here, I sort of intended to get the maximum wind in that room by having a lot of windows, like having 5 windows on south and east included. So that sort of funnels in the wind and keeps the studio, even in summers, it's sort of the roof which we have used here, they are insulated roof. So they use the polyurethane foam inside and sandwiched between metal sheets. So it sort of helps you to, yeah, the heat loss will be, like it insulates the studio from the harsh sun as we speak. So terracotta, reclaimed wood, and not using AC, and what else? Using the same old building without knocking it down. I consider that sustainable, Shakti. I could have, I very easily, now since that all the FSI, the floor space index in the uh, government, the corporation rules have been changed. So I might as well have knocked down the old bungalow and built a new building with, like right now it's just 2 floors or 1 floor, G+1. I could have built it to 4, 5 floors also, and I could have done that, but that wouldn't have been sustainable, according to me. I think we should reuse the old bungalows. We should amplify the old bungalows for adding functionalities as we speak. These days, like you need to add more functions to your homes. Like there will be 1 or 2 kids more. There will be 1 or 2 families more at times. Like you need to, keep those in the consideration. So I think that is that. That explains your question, I guess. Anything else?
I think we can move on, Guna. We can move to the next project.
Next project, no? Okay. So the next project was a very old house in Egmore. It's a street house, and as soon as I saw this house, I told my client, why not, refurbish this old house? Let's refurbish this. Why should you? The client wanted to bring down the whole building and then come up with something new. And then he said, wait, let's go inside. Then we'll see if I'm taking your suggestion or not. So we went into the house and we saw that, like there is no house there. Everything has already collapsed and it's gone. It has lost its structures, it has lost its thing to termites. So everything was gone. So we sort of took the whole house down. And it was again, like it's a street house. So what is the challenge which we are facing here is on both uh, the south and the north side, you wouldn't be able to have windows at all. So there is no light coming from the longest part of the house on both sides. So that was the challenge which I was given with. When this project started, I was just a freelancer, and I was it was just me who was dealing with everything. I was the one who was the project manager. I was the peon. I was everything. I was the architect. I was the one who was collaborating with the materials people. I was talking with them. I was getting everything done. So this project was completely challenging due to the space, due to the lack of the ability to bring in light and ventilation through the longest parts of the house on both sides. Since they're, like this side, there is a very old house with a lot of termite issues. So we need to, sort of treat the walls and the foundations as we went ahead. And I also made sure that there is no columns in the center except one, which is eventually will be like taking care of supporting the staircase. As you can see, the reinforcements here, that is the only the only column which you'll be seeing inside the house. So we sort of went ahead and, like, yeah. So to paint a picture, so both sides houses, and south side, yeah, this is the south side. South is the front facade. South and north are the shorter sides. I'm sorry, I need to take back whatever I said before. East and west is what are the longest sides. So east and west is exactly where you get the sun. So either the west sun or the east sun. So both the sides are covered with houses. Only the second floor I can open, but I cannot take that risk because both these houses might be demolished, and there might be a bigger building than our building here. So I need to close both the walls on both sides, and this is what finally we came up with. But I made sure we have a nice small, like skylight with all the sides windows to lead the stack effect. As you can see, I would have hashtag stack effect. Stack effect is a simple principle where the hot air rises up, and if you have windows right where this person is seeing, if you keep the windows open here, all the hot air will rise up and goes out. But I need to bring in fresh wind inside so that the comfort level is maintained. So for which what we did was right above this stairwell, we had a wind catcher facing towards the southeast direction. So the wind sort of blows into the house from the terrace level. So as you can see the representation here. So this is a pitched roof here. It's slightly pitched. It's around 2.5 feet taller in this end than this end. So it sort of increases in height when it goes outwards. And so this is the southeast direction, the direction in which the mouse is moving. So the wind comes in through these jollies, and there is windows on the east side. So it brings in the wind from the third level to the first floor level via these openings in the cantilevered staircase. So right, right in this level, uh, I will be getting wind from the topmost level. So as you can see here, sorry, as you can see here, this particular representation will show you how the skylight works and how these upward opening windows work. So you don't have to open these windows upwardly too much. You don't have to open it too much. You can just partially open all the windows a little bit so that even rainwater doesn't get into it because it's not coming out of the structure. Since it's upward motion windows. I'm sure you all know that this window itself will act as a shading device. So the wind comes in through the wind catcher and the hot air rises up and goes out via these windows on all the three sides. So this sort of maintains the comfort level inside the house completely. So in here you will be able to see the first level. In this first level, everything will be open. Only there will be just one wall here for the master bedroom, uh, and rest of it is completely open planning. We haven't introduced more materials. We haven't introduced extra walls for partitions from dining to living, or only from the dining to the kitchen. We introduced the uh, carpentry unit here, part of the kitchen. So this is where your chimney is. This is where your hob is going to be. But this is where your dining is, so that whatever is served can be kept here and taken to the dining table right from here. So this is the other side of the kitchen, where this one faces the street, and it's very densely populated part of Egmore in Chennai. So I wanted maximum light from this direction as well into the kitchen. And here is the sink, and right opposite to the sink is the fridge, the refrigerator, and there is something called a working triangle in kitchens, in kitchen designing itself. So in this kitchen, that working triangle has been thought amazingly. You know, to be put it in a better way, in a more efficient way, where you take something out of the fridge here, you wash it, you cut it, and put it into the stuff. So that is how the triangle works. So we made sure all the functionalities were taken care of, and you will be able to see the second floor only, where the TV area will be there right next to uh, this double height ceiling, this atrium space. So from second level, you can look down into the living room. From this space, you can look above into the skylight. So there is this visual interaction which was part of the concept, because this whole project itself was designed on base of this particular family of five people. So father, mother, two kids, and a grandmother. So just the five of them. Where the point here is the family has been living in a 800 square feet apartment, a bedroom apartment, for all their lives. For almost 15 to 20 years, they have lived in a 750 square feet apartment. So the concept was to uh, give them a very what introvert planning, in the sense, since it's a very populated area and it's a bus route in Egmore, there'll be a lot of noise and a lot of dust pollution in the front facade. So we made sure the wind catcher is fitted with necessary nets and stuff, so that it doesn't bring in all the dust inside. As well as we made sure that there is a visual interaction in such a way that when somebody is in the kitchen, they would be able to see the person sitting in the second floor level. So that sort of increases the visual interaction, and that sort of gives you a psychological feeling where you are not alone in that floor or the house. There is somebody else, or a family member is there around, is consistently shown to you in such a space. So especially you'll be able to witness it right here. So right underneath here, if somebody is moving around in the second floor level, I would be able to see from my first floor living. And from second floor also, there is uh, this particular area is done for home theater area. So there are shutters placed later here, so that if they want to watch TV, they can close the shutters. If there is no TV watching, they're just reading a newspaper, they're just using the area, the space for something else, they might as well open the shutters and have this natural light right here. So since this particular, I think we have more questions here. What difficulties you faced while communicating your design to the constructors and carpenters? Difficulties are will be there if you are only giving drawings and expecting it to come up in sight without you facing difficulties with your carpenters and masons. You have to be at site. You have to be there for them. Scratching those walls with chalk pieces, telling them where the electricity line should be, telling them where the metal structures are going to be placed, and you have to make sure. I sort of manually drew all these areas where these cantilever steps are going to come, and the masons just did their job once I drew it myself manually. I climbed above these scaffoldings which were placed there, and I drew step by step how it's going to come, where the granite is going to come on top of that, and I made sure they responded to my drawings. So I don't ask them to act on their own. I made sure they react to my drawings on site on the walls. So it is sort of a customized way of operating at site. So which is a new trend. I'm noticing it everywhere. All my friends are doing it. I think in a small practice like this, it can be done. Only if the practice is getting bigger, you might have to make necessary drawings, more number of drawings, more number of details to help them understand your thought process. So that is that. And Krishna Sam has asked for what difficulty. Oh, that is the same question. What kind of wood is used in the kitchen? It's regular plywood, waterproof plywood, and later we sort of moved on to HRDR sort of a material where it's sort of like waterproof, pesticide proof, pest proof and fireproof and all that. So it comes along in terms of high resistant plywoods or high resistant cement boards or calcium silicate boards or something like that. So it sort of is waterproof since it's kitchen, as well as since the next door neighbor is facing a lot of termite issues, so we didn't want those termites to attack these. So we made sure we went for you have to explore the market to figure it out for every site is different, and this site had these complications, so we made sure we went for something which will react to the site. So Akshaya has asked how to use sustainable materials to bring a contemporary style to use in nowadays. Akshaya, you need to make sure you know the definition of contemporary style in the first place. Like we call it contemporary if it's sleek, we call it contemporary if there is more glass and steel and all these materials. But I think contemporary is overrated, and the style which I follow is I'm moving in is sort of tropical, modern, as well as sustainable. So the narrative can change. The narrative can vary according to the client's needs as well. If a client comes to me and offers me a project and I say I will only be doing sustainable projects right now, being a very small practice, and that's not a very smart thing. So what I did was we are coming up with a project in Porur where we are completely avoiding cement construction. We are completely avoiding cement and sand. Only for the superstructures we are going for uh, concrete, where cement and sand and other raw materials are going to be used, including water, which is not sufficiently available in Chennai right now. So we are going for something called a CSEB blocks, which is used by many sustainable architects around Auroville in Kerala. One particular architect called Vinu Daniel, who is very contemporary and modern in his practice, as well as very sustainable. He uses CSEB blocks. I personally prefer the compressed stabilized earth blocks which are interlockable. And there are separate masons who are available for such projects, where they take up a project and they use sustained, like compressed stabilized earth blocks which are interlockable on both the directions, horizontally as well as vertically. So you just have to use a wooden hammer to, like hammer them into the existing wall, into the tongue and groove, a sort of thing which is available in the same prefabricated CSCB blocks. So though in those ways you can actually avoid cement and sand, and of course the interior space is going to maintain the microclimate even more in a better way. So in this particular dwelling, bringing in the wind directly sort of gives me that advantage of not using air conditioner. Only for the master bedroom they have air conditioners, but they are saying that they keep the doors open because since it's a very introvert planning and not too many people can look into this area. So that 750 square feet apartment they have been in, and now they are here in a bungalow sort of thing. It's more like a villa sort of planning with a very narrow plan of 20 feet by 66 feet. But still, the volume is increased, and you have a double height atrium, and you have opened almost a double height stairwell, which brings in a lot of wind. It's sort of like explains that sustainability quotient right here. And this is the section of the whole project where you'll be able to see this is the wind catcher on top, and this is the front elevation right here, this portion. And there is a single entry as well as an entry for the cars. This is the first floor level with the kitchen's windows, the clear story and the window. And this is the second floor level, and this is the terrace. And the wind catcher, right on top of the wind catcher there are solar panels placed. And it's not much of a representation, but you'll be able to see the wind coming in via the wind catcher, entering it into, so it crosses one level completely, the second floor level, and enters the first floor level. So only the first floor and second floor are the dwelling unit. So, and here the hot air rises up and it moves it through the windows, and the stack effect is explained here. And yeah, that is that. And here is a small write-up of how the site was sandwiched between, like other neighboring houses right next to each other, and how linear it was, and how we introduced light wells. There are two light wells. I forgot to mention the other light well, which was placed right here. So right next to the uh, lift well, there is this puja which is hiding behind the lift well, facing the east direction. So ironically, we have sunlight directly coming into the puja area, right next to the lift area. As you can see here, this is the uh, puja area which has the skylight, and it is mentioned where and all the sunlight enters the house is mentioned in the lighter tone right here in the presentation. So there is another skylight right here, and one other the big skylight right here. So yeah, any more questions? What how to use sustainable material to build contemporary style for construction of compact spaces? Regular standards can be satisfied. So, what kind of standard do you use in case of anthropometry and ergonomics? Okay, so I myself, went for my master's in furniture design, uh, Krishna. So, economics and anthropometry are right in my head, and I don't usually go and go into any standards and look into that. I usually take clients themselves as my anthropometric and ergonomics standard sizes. So whoever is going to use the space the most, they are they are going to give me the dimensions of ergonomics and the anthropometry as such. Anything from the staircase, anything from the width of the staircase, anything from the corridors, uh, anything from the lintel height, everything is designed or decided based on the height of the client, the kitchen counter's height, the sofa's height, everything is determined by the average height of the number of people who is going to live in that particular space. So that is how I go about it. And I make sure it is very personal, and I make sure that uh, the even the colors which come into the project, I make sure I usually go into the client's bedroom initially and take their permission and open their wardrobes and see. Because if you ask anyone, what color do you like, what color do you want the interiors to be, they might say what's their favorite color is, but they might not know how that color is going to be experienced standing in that space. What if a client likes a red room and you paint the whole room red? And what does that say about your practice? What does that say about the functionality or psychological uh, aspect of that room? The point is how the red comes in matters and how much the red comes in matters. So I usually open the wardrobes and see what are the colors which present in the wardrobes. So inertly, the client might be inclined towards a particular color. There might be a second favorite color. There might be a third favorite color, which can be used majorly. At the same time, the, the space can uh, bring more harmony by doing that, because the most favorite color usually are very bold colors and they might not be helpful to you when coming up with a big space or a smaller space especially. So I sort of go about it that way. It is very personal for me. I step into the client shoes and then think about the sustainability later. So yeah. And the user insisted to give importance on vast. I don't like that question, but still I would like to answer that. Uh, Vastu wasn't introduced initially. I gave the client two options, saying that one according to Vastu and one option is not according to Vastu. The client picked the option with no Vastu, and later made few changes, wanted to make few changes, like according to Vastu, which I made sure I incorporated them, but it's not too visible from outside, and it's not too, uh, making my design philosophy vulnerable. I made sure of that. And the diameter of the skylight is 8 feet, Umar Sadiq. Yeah. And anything else, Prithvi, would you like to highlight?
Uh, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I have one more sports facility which I designed. I can show them that. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. It's an interesting project, but it's not a very conservative project. It's a very one of a kind project.
Oh, no problem. You can go ahead with that. I would
Hmm.
just make an announcement that guys, you can just put down your questions in the question answer chat box. There was one question in the chat box that came, which I'll read it so that you can reply to it, and then you can go ahead.
Sure.
It says, while constructing this building, did you get any crack or obstacle
Hmm.
facing from the nearby buildings? Because according to the norms, based on what they have studied as of now,
Yeah.
they have learned to leave setbacks. So uh,
Correct.
what kind of obstacles did you face when there was no setbacks like that?
Okay. Who asked for this particular question, Prithvi, if I may know?
Divya, I
Divya.
think it's a first year student.
Okay. Divya, there are certain areas in Chennai where like a complete street or a complete few streets are filled with only street houses. So in those regions of our uh, like of Chennai, you can go ahead and build street houses again. So if there is only 10 feet available for you, you cannot you cannot be expected to leave some more setback and come up with something there. You won't be even to able to construct a toilet there. So the site available was 20 feet, and we responded to that because uh, the FSI norms or whatever norms in that particular area, it's filled with street houses only. So we also went ahead and built a street house, and cracks and stuff. What you need to do is keep in mind is, once the building is going to go down, after once you've completed the building and they're going to demolish the next building, they'll be able to see all your brick outlays and everything. So what you need to do is mix some termite resistant or waterproof chemicals, put together in cement mixture, and plaster it onto the existing neighbor's wall, and then put the bricks to the wall, so that when they are taking down the old building, you know, it portions of it might come down, but the termites or the water won't be directly coming or seeping into the walls here. And we didn't get any cracks as of now. The building has been completed for 1 year and we haven't got any cracks because all our columns are packed into the 9-inch wall on both sides. So there are no columns, I said, which are inside the which are visible in the project, but except the one wall, which is one sorry one. So only this column, which is supporting the staircase landing, will be able to see in the entire house. So since all the columns are backed inside, actually this house only has 10 columns. The number of columns which we have used for the 20 feet by 66 feet is 10, except the lift unit has 4 columns separately. Except that, we just have 10 columns, and all the columns coming on the periphery of the whole project. So that allows us to, avoid all the cracks. The columns take care of. Here you'll be able to see all those columns in the periphery alone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 into 2, it's 10. So 10 number of columns, that's it. And as you can see, all these houses are street houses. And in this part of Chennai, they don't have any restrictions. And all these houses have been this way for around centuries. And like olden days, they have uh, a Kollapuratu drainage system for all these houses behind. But we took the effort to apply to the corporation and got all the the drainage systems to the road in the front, because that is the way forward. You cannot expect the very old 100-year-old drainage system to work for you for the next 50 to 60 years. So yeah. Any more questions? I don't think so.
No, thanks. We can move to the next one, Gunam.
Okay, great. Thank you, Principal. So the next project was, the same ancestral property. There was this huge kitchen garden. So this is the kitchen, and this was the kitchen garden where they used to have that old ammi kodavi and that outdoor wooden uh, the adupu, and we had this uh, vaழமரம் and everything. But what we wanted was, from the client side, they wanted to come up with a sports facility in this area. As you know, all know that futsal, a miniature football has become a thing recently. So they sort of wanted people to play football inside the nets with the floodlights and everything. So this is the time when Varda cyclone have hit the Chennai, and almost 10 number of coconut trees have fell down right here. This is my own family property, and I did this project for my own family, and separately several other investors were there in this particular project. So I had to satisfy all their needs. So I'll show you the process of how I went about it. So this is the area where our uppermost part of the studio was there, and this is where our studio starts. So we sort of side by side came up with both the constructions. So I'll show you, I'll take you through that design process as well. We sort of had 100 feet by 50 feet width. So it's of right proportions, 1:2 ratio. The whole of futsal court is going to come. So inside this cage, the ball is not going to go out, and it's going to be completely open to sky, and it's going to be with a lot of floodlights, so that in the night also you can have a lot of games. So that was the whole idea. So in this area, we sort of like started construction, having metal posts to be dug underneath and kept, so that bigger metal posts can be like we sort of had a plinth beam around. So in this picture you'll be able to see the plinth beam running underneath, and all these posts were going 4 feet underneath into beyond that plinth beam as well. So there are columns for 4 feet everywhere around, and we sort of came up with the beam around the periphery, and once the beam and all was set, we sort of started building a small wall on top of it, and the posts came around, and a single brick wall was organized around it, and these are very like simple things, and we sort of tested the lighting during the course of the construction as well. We sort of made sure that there is enough light even before the construction is over, because we need to get enough wiring on the top post which is running, and like in between there were rains, and the whole of area was flooded. So during this time we took this as our advantage, and we sort of like made sure we used iron rods to make holes for 2-3 feet, and we sort of rammed the earth underneath and made sure it's hard enough, so that after putting the synthetic turf on top of it, it doesn't give way, or yeah, or more rains would cause the floor to sink in. So for which we need to make sure we ram the earth with while the water was on top of it. We sort of drilled here and there and made sure the water is seeping inside, and we got that done. And so so this is the facility, and this green compound wall which you see here is the road. That's where you enter the property. So what we made sure was we introduce we sort of thought about having an office room, and on top of the office room we wanted a gallery seating for people to sit and view the whole game going on. So there is this restaurant, Sandy's Tenampet, right next to the property. So it's sort of we were looking at people who are going to walk there, they are going to look at people who are going to play here. So that is not going to be that much of a, a breach of privacy, because people who come here are mostly not annoying, they are decent, and probably they're just going to watch the game, and there is not going to be much of news from that side. But we wanted to secure the privacy of whoever is playing here from the roads. We didn't want anybody from the road to look at people who are playing here. There are yoga sessions which happen in the mornings for women, and there are like women, all women's football team which come and coach here in the mornings. So later, this planning, like this uh, privacy, thing sort of helped us later. Also, we made sure we wanted to bring in a shipping container and then insulate it and put it as our office right here. But later we figured out that is going to cost more than what we had as our budget. So we sort of went ahead and removed old columns from our old bungalow, like old car parks. And what we did was we reused those iron columns, which are 50, 60 years old. What we did was we tested the tensile strength of these metal columns using a few of our engineers, and we sort of cut the defected parts of it, and then we used the best part of these eye sections, metal 6-inch eye sections, and we sort of had a proper foundation for this, and we raised it a little bit, and we sort of went ahead and you know So this is how the gallery was planned. So bent metal was brought in, and there were sort of metal L angles which were welded together, and all the necessary supports were given, and this whole structure stands on these 6 numbers of 6-inch I sections and 2 numbers of new C sections, and the gallery seating was right on top. So we need to introduce a metal staircase right next to it. So this is where we introduce the metal staircase, and people can access this metal staircase and go on top. And if somebody wants to use this passageway and go use the restroom or the office space, they can use that as well. So, so as you can see, so the 6-inch eye sections, they were introduced with a one brick wall, like in between the eye sections, and then they become later holistically they take care of the load as well. So this is how we came up with the whole office and the gallery seating part of it. So this is the view which you get from the angle and everything, which I made sure I was there directly sitting on top, and we tied threads to this goalposts, and we made sure the viewing angle is right. And finally, this is what we sort of achieved. So you come in from the compound right here, you enter into the office space, like you book your slot, and people who wants to go up and watch the match, they can go up. Usually there are 3 teams which come. So 2 teams will be playing inside, the other team will be resting. And if somebody gets tired, substitution will come from above and go inside. That's how they work. And it's completely well lit, and we introduced fans later so that it's not too hot over here. And by doing this, we made sure we saved these 2 trees uh, in the corner of the property. So there is one coconut tree on the side, and there is one coconut tree on behind. So we saved these 2 coconut trees later, uh, and yeah. So this shows a picture of how the office space, the toilets, the generator room, and the gallery seating, everything has come up. And finally, we sort of gave a red to the opposite wall. So So we chose a color scheme which is going to be bold, and for all the social media purpose, if somebody, the facility's name is going to be Route One. So if somebody is going to type Route One, they need to, identify the facility with certain colors. So we sort of gave the color red and yellow because it's two or very both contrasting and bold colors, and we want to use those colors. And finally, we sort of laid the turf, you know, laid the turf and gave it red, white, green, yellow combination. And this is the viewing angle from the top. So you'll be able to see both the goalposts from on top. And yeah, this is the opposite goalpost, uh, which is designed proportionate to the size of the field. So the sustainable part of it, I must say that I didn't cover the roof because covering the roof would ensure more number of bookings on rainy days, on summers, and all that. But by keeping this open, you sort of don't have to air condition the space again, and you don't have to introduce wind turbines or fans or too many of any equipments. And we made sure, like we reuse the old metal fabrications from the old garage, and we sort of achieved whatever we wanted to. And I would like to show you the stands. So this was the metal staircase with the gallery seating, which is covering us from the street. You enter through here, and that is what that is. And in such cramped space, what is it? Really good the awareness of importance of sustainability in this modern world. Okay, for Sakti Mohan's second question, I would like to say that the clients will have their priorities. The clients will have their own requirements. The what you can do is you can try and educate them over a period of time about how using Indian stones or locally available stones rather than using an imported tile, which which of course the client needs utmost sophistication. At the last, finally they want to have a sophisticated or a modern or a very dashy flashy, uh, uh, looking space. If that's what they want, you can show them a minimalistic approach of other projects, projects of other architects or other inspirations, which conclude sophistication as well. Like the same way, older columns are recuperated and used in new resorts and hotels. Old furnitures are refurbished and used in new Indeco resorts. We see all that these days. And what we have to do is paint a picture, educate a client in such a way that they take the right decision end of the day. End of the day, you are rooting for going for a complete kadapa or a quota stone for an entire project, but that client would want to go for an imported tile. But you can settle for something like you laying a completely another Indian stone like a marble or an Indian marble or a green marble or something which is locally available, but it can be sustainable because you can repolish it and reuse it. You don't have to retile it in 20 years. You can repolish it. If there is a marble, you can repolish it. If it's a granite, you can actually make it, like all those polyurethane coats, and there is diamond polish, and there are so many things which are in market right now. You can do to an Indian stone to get a particular finish. All they need is glossy. You can give them glossy with the Indian stone itself. You can do IPS flooring. You can do what can I say, a polished, wax polished cement flooring, compressed concrete, polyurethane coated flooring. All those things are there. So you have to educate the client and show them the end product of other works, not only your projects, but other architects who have succeeded, especially in Auroville, especially in like Sacred Groves, tunnel hand sculpted homes, Like there are so many firms who are sustainably, they're doing really well, and they are giving sophistication in a different package. So you have to educate them in such a way. I wouldn't call it manipulation, but you can educate them in such a way that they find exposed brick wall sustainable, so that you can save a lot of cement, sand, and water in plastering the walls. You can use the CACB blocks and not plaster it, so that you can reduce the building construction by 30%. For example, if you're using CACB blocks, if it's going to take 1 lakh to build a particular room, you will only be spending 70,000 for building that room if you're using a compressed stabilized earth block. So by showing, by tapping onto that nerve of what that client wants, the client might not need just sophistication, the client needs something else also. But how to satisfy that requirement by sustainable means, you need to find a way. You shouldn't rely on just what the market offers. You can't just say that only aluminum windows are available in this size. So you should be able to only go for either UPVC windows or this. You might as well say, let's go to Karaikudi. Let's see if there are old windows and doors which are thrown out. Let's see if they can we can treat it for pesticides and fire resistance and use it in our project. One of my very own friends who did her complete house with like doors and windows from only one single project. What she did was she went to Mylapore, and right next to Chitrakolam in Mylapore, she figured out they are taking down a building. So she went to the owner, and what she did was she said she would like to buy all the doors and windows from him. And she took her masons and removed it carefully by not damaging them. And she brought it to her house and made sure she used every one of them. So I can even arrange a visit to this house if Prithvi wants, because it's a very interesting house. And, it's somewhere near Velachery, I guess. Yeah, so it's completely done with red oxide, and all the colored glasses from the clear story lights have been retained. Completely exposed brick walls, and one side, on the west side, she has used completely stone masonry, Karangal masonry. So like, you just have to have the will to convince your client and educate your client to go in a very sustainable way. So if you can do that to a certain extent, even for me, these are very initial projects. I might have collaborated with other architects over these past 11 years and done several other projects. But when I started Studio Asari, I made sure that I'm not including my older projects in my portfolio, because I wanted the portfolio to make a statement that we are trying to balance between sustainability and the client's requirement. So someday we would like to, the tunnel vision is to, the bigger picture is to do only sustainable projects. But during your earlier phase, especially when you're doing a third year in architecture, fourth year in architecture, you will be offered projects on your own by your relatives and friends. But you can go ahead and like experiment in few of them, and see how handling a client is difficult, and see how you are good at it, and see how you can educate them in certain ways, and how you can defy what market offers you alone. You can go to any extent by overlooking the market, by thinking about customizing each and every element of design inside your project or space. I think you can achieve anything related to sustainability, or even a masterpiece of your career. Anything else, Prithvi?
Um, yeah, you've answered all the three questions, right? Yeah.
Right.
Actually, I would like to take you up on the offer. Maybe we'll bring some of our students to
Visit that particular house.
yeah, and even your projects as well. because some of them will be moving into actual design of smaller spaces, houses, and things like that. So having an ideology in designing that would be quite helpful for them also.
Okay.
So I'll take you up on that offer in the coming semester.
Okay.
However, it could be done or it could be arranged. Thank you so much. Do you have anything else to add?
Nothing else, Prithvi. That's it.
Okay, I hope all the students would have enjoyed it, because there were a lot of questions that came. Very practically, the session was taken. Basically, we generally as architects, we only show drawings, right? And
Correct.
we are basically expect the students also to understand or read the drawings. But today's presentation, it was about how that drawing gets translated into a building as such, right? So
Correct.
I think that was something which they would have taken up and they would have learned a lot from that. So
Okay.
thank you so much for joining.
Okay.
And I will keep in touch, and maybe we'll have another session in the coming
Please,
semester.
please do. Please do. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. Yeah.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.